guest speakers. Yes, that's plural. As you know, a Sarah Lawrence education is rooted in the power of dialogue, that deep and collaborative exploration of a topic, a policy, or an idea that is a catalyst for intellectual growth. And so, in the spirit of dialogue and the breadth of its content it cultivates, today's commencement keynote will take the form of a conversation between two pioneering scientists and public servants. I'm unsure of the formal definition of power couple, but I am going to invoke it with artistic control today and say that Diane Baker and Francis Collins are definitely a power couple. Diane is a graduate of Sarah Lawrence's Joan H. Marks graduate program in human genetics and is a pioneer and leader in the field of genetic counseling. After studying here, she went on to become a founding faculty member and director of the genetic counseling program at the University of Michigan. She also served as president of the National Society of Genetic Counselors. And in 2004, she was the recipient of the Natalie Weisberger Paul Achievement Award from the NSGC. In 2010, the University of Michigan established the Diane Baker Alumni Lecture and Award in Genetic Counseling in honor of her contributions to the profession. For those of you keeping track, that makes 2 Sarah Lawrence graduates here today who have received the Natalie Weisberger Paul Achievement Award. Joining Diane on stage today as her trailing spouse is the director of the National Institutes of Health and her husband, Dr. Francis Collins. As a leader of the NIH, Dr. Collins oversees the work of the largest public supporter of biomedical research in the world, spanning the spectrum from basic to clinical research. Indeed, NIH funding has led to medical breakthroughs for HIV and cancer treatment and has allowed scientists to explore the patchwork of genes that blend together to make the mystical duck-billed platypus. In 2009, he was appointed the 16th director of the NIH by President Barack Obama, and in 2017, President Donald Trump announced his selection of Dr. Collins to continue to serve as director. A physician geneticist, Dr. Collins is noted for his landmark discoveries of disease genes and his leadership of the International Human Genome Project, which culminated in 2003 with the completion of a finished sequence of the human DNA instruction book. Before coming to the NIH, Dr. Collins was a Howard Hughes Medical Institute investigator at the University of Michigan. He is an elected member of the National Academy of Medicine and the National Academy of Sciences. He was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom in November 2007 and received the National Medal of Science in 2009. Please join me in welcoming Diane Baker and Francis Collins.
Thank you. How convenient that they have 2 microphones for us. So, President Judd, faculty, security, groundskeepers, events planners, fans of graduates, all who even aren't in this tent, we thank you all for making today possible.
Yeah.
Thank you. And understandably, you think we're going to talk about genetics. We're not.
No.
As Francis and I prepared for today,
Sort of.
we realized that the theme in our lives, as we thought about what has been significant for us, it was really about taking leaps. And that was the theme we went with and wish to share with you. And I'm going to begin with the words of Henry Miller, who said, "All growth is a leap in the dark, a spontaneous, unpremeditated act without benefit of experience." And it's the without benefit of experience that has benefited us most. So we're going to get really awkward here and talk about the first big leap we took, which was our own relationship. Do you want to? And in typical Sarah Lawrence fashion, we are going to have a conversation with you about this.
Did we talk about the relationship part? Okay, sure. Well, may I say, I'm delighted to be a trailing spouse today and celebrate Diane Baker and all that she's done for the field of genetic counseling at this remarkable place, Sarah Lawrence. And I guess having a conversation for a commencement address wouldn't probably work at Harvard or Yale, but hopefully it'll work reasonably well here. I think of Sarah Lawrence as emblematic of what Yeats said about education. That is, it is not the filling of a pail, it's the lighting of a fire. From what I can tell, you all are well lit. So back to that relationship thing. So, okay, without being too disclosing, I married my high school sweetheart when I was 19, and we were very different people headed in very different directions. And after 23 years, she said, enough of this. And I became a despondent, moping single person at the University of Michigan trying to figure out, is there ever going to be another love relationship for me, or am I sort of stuck in this zone? But there was this person that I occasionally saw patients with who seemed so capable, so bright and sunny, so thoughtful. That's that genetic counseling training that does that. And, but I was like stuck in age 15. I didn't know, how would you actually ask somebody out? I was having a hard time.
And I had realized I had an interest in Francis, and I thought, I don't know how to explore this further. So I went to an intermediary, one of his graduate students, who was a personal friend, and I walk into Mitch Drum's office one afternoon and close the door. And you don't close the door in Mitch's office. His eyes got like saucers. He's like, why are you closing the door? And I thought, okay, I'm just gonna go with it and keep my courage up. And I said, Mitch, I was just thinking of asking Francis out, and I wonder if you know if he's dating anyone. And Mitch sputtered, and his eyes stayed like saucers, and he said, Diane, we don't talk about those things. I said, okay, thanks, bye.
Little did Diane know that I was talking to Mitch also and saying, do you think Diane is seeing anybody? And how would I be able to actually ask her out? And I don't know what I'm doing. And he was useless. But
we were fortunate that his wife, a wise woman, heard the story and called me up and said, okay, Diane, how are we going to make this work? And another friend had given me basketball tickets, and this was back in the day we had something archaic called intercampus mail, where you put things in envelopes and the campus delivered them. Oh. And I thought, okay, if Francis is too embarrassed, he can just act like he never got this. But I invited him to a basketball game, and on my voice message, I got a, hey, I'd be glad to go to a basketball game with you, which has resulted in us continuing and enjoying celebrating our first date and continually forgetting our wedding anniversary.
So, okay, it worked out thanks to all those intervening, and that was a big leap, I'll tell you, especially for me, not having a clue how to do this. 5 years later, we got married. 3 years after that, we actually started living in the same town, if you can imagine that. People speculated whether our marriage would survive cohabitation. I'm glad to say it has. So other leaps. You know, there's the relationship one. We got through that. Now,
Thank you.
Diane, I think you have something you might want to share that involves Sarah Lawrence and some bad behavior on your part.
I am a very, very grateful graduate of Sarah Lawrence, and a big tip of my graduation cap to my director, Joan Marks, who probably doesn't recall, but in the first weeks of the program, she talked me out of not quitting.
Oh, really?
I was like, I don't think this is the right program. She made me stay, and I'm so glad she did. But by the time I was graduating, I had been putting myself through this program and had run out of money that I had saved and borrowed.
None of you can imagine what that would be like, I'm sure.
Yeah, I was kind of broke. What I had going for me, it turns out, is the fact that we were not yet an electronic record-keeping age. And as I left Sarah Lawrence without my diploma, I got this fabulous job at the University of Michigan, jumped into that, everything was going great, and a couple months in, two things happened. I started getting dunning notices from Sarah Lawrence, and the personnel office called and said, gee, there's this little problem missing from your folder. We don't have a diploma. And I realized I hadn't quite thought this through. But having the non-electronic records in my favor, I managed to spend the next 2 years dodging them both. And when personnel called and said, we still don't have that diploma, I would be, and they didn't send a letter, they called. I say, Sarah Lawrence hasn't sent my diploma. I can't believe them. Let me let me request it again. I'm so sorry. And of course, with Sarah Lawrence, I was just like, it's coming. And finally, I was able to, I believe, clear the record, but maybe someone wants to check on that.
Maybe they don't want to check on that. Okay, bad behavior there. But sometimes you have to do leaps when you least expect them, and they lead places you didn't think they could possibly go. So I'm going to tell a very little story about an evening 3 years ago where Diane and I were invited to a dinner party. It was a pretty special dinner party. It was on a Saturday night. And at the party were 3 Supreme Court justices, Antonin Scalia, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, and Anthony Kennedy. I thought I'd get a rush out of our RBG there. And it was a very special moment because the day before was the day when the Supreme Court had announced their decision to approve same-sex marriage. And imagine Scalia and Ginsburg were on different sides of this, and Kennedy had cast the vote that made it 5-4 in favor. So this was a little bit of a tense evening, and everybody was, you could feel the air cut by a knife. And after dinner, there was this really awful bluegrass band that was trying to cheer us up, and that wasn't really working. But somehow, by some accident, I had brought my guitar, and so I thought, well, you know, the only way you can really get people together at a time like this is to get them to sing, right? You all know that. So, and at this same dinner party, somebody I'd never met, but who actually knows kind of how to sing, was Renee Fleming, the most highly regarded operatic soprano of our era, who also is a very diverse set of experiences and capabilities. So Renee and I did a quick powwow and decided we would start singing to the group. And we sang The Water is Wide, this wonderful English ballad. And you could start to feel things were changing. The Supreme Court justices who'd been off in their corners kind of came forward to hear this and listen. We got them to sing a couple other things. Scalia by then had a glass of brandy and was chomping on his cigar. And I couldn't resist. The next song we sang, and I got him to sing the last line along, was "The Times They Are A-Changin'." RBG still tells this story, by the way. And so as a result of that, Renee Fleming and I became friends. And now 3 years later, we have this remarkable program called Music in the Mind, which is aiming to try to understand how music therapy and music performance could be better understood with advances in neuroscience that are supported by the NIH. We're funding an additional $5 million worth of research in this space. The Kennedy Center is all engaged. This has opened up a whole new field, all because of that leap into a slightly scary spot of deciding to sing in front of people who were pretty mad at each other at the time. So you all know how to do that. This is a classic Sarah Lawrence kind of behavior. Some of the rest of us might have had more trouble imagining it, but when you see that moment, do it. Go for it. More leaps, huh?
Yeah, another leap, and a leap that you may find yourselves considering. It's a protracted leap for me. So I have spent most of my life in an academic environment. And one of the rewards for that can be a faculty appointment. And the entry-level appointment is the assistant professor, then there's associate professor, and there's full professor. So I was in a basic science department at the University of Michigan, the human genetics department in the medical school. I was the first and only member there who didn't have a PhD or MD. I was the master's genetic counseling person. That's the terminal degree in my field. And I went to my chairman and said, okay, how do I get on the ladder for these faculty appointments? And he said, oh, Diane, we don't do that. The medical school doesn't do that for people who don't have MDs or PhDs, and you're doing a lot of stuff in education and public speaking, but you know, there's the whole bring in 40% of your salary on outside funds, and he said, I don't know. And I was like, I think I can give that a try. So that led me to leap for the next few years. How could I meet those requirements? And I formed alliances with the School of Nursing and the School of Public Health. We're both interested in having more genetics in their curriculum, and also the Women in Science program in our undergraduate curriculum. And I brought in more than 40% of my salary on outside grants. I had all the publications that were necessary, and I met the other requirements. So my chairman and I submitted a package for a promotion to the first rung, which is the assistant professor. And after promotions committee met, my chairman called me in and said, okay, let's see what I got the letter. Here's what they said. And he said, I'm sorry. They did not approve your request to be an assistant professor. And he pushes the letter across the table. He said, they congratulate you on becoming an associate professor. So there are hurdles out there in academia and in the other areas we're going to be, and they're hurdles you can challenge.
And sometimes they take you in directions you don't expect. My little career story comes in 1992 when I'm at the University of Michigan and doing what I love, taking care of patients, teaching medical students, and doing research. But the Human Genome Project is just getting started, and its initial leader, Jim Watson, only stayed a short time. That's a long story. And suddenly, they're looking for somebody to come to NIH and lead this historic enterprise to read out all the letters of the DNA instruction book, something that we will only do once in history. And the phone rings, and it's Bernadine Healy, the director of NIH, saying, Francis, I want you to come and apply for this job. And I said, you got to be crazy. You must have the wrong number. This is not my idea of what I want to do. This is not my life plan. Find somebody else. Well, she persisted. And eventually I found myself sitting in her office, and she was giving me the big pitch about why this was such a great opportunity and I would regret it if I didn't do it and all the things that this could lead to. Mind you, this was a project at that point that most people thought was doomed to fail because we had really no idea how we were going to do this. And I was prepared again with all my defenses to say, no, I'm not going to do this. And she stopped in the middle of a sentence. It's like one of those moments where you see it in your mind, and she said, darn it, Francis, I don't think I'm getting through to you. I just had this vision, she said, that it's a few decades from now, and we're in an assisted living home, you and me, and I'm walking down the hallway with my walker, kind of slowly, and you're walking towards me with your walker, also kind of slowly, and we come up next to each other, and we stop, and you look at me, and you say, damn it, Bernie, I should have taken that job. That was the craziest, dumbest thing anybody's ever said to me as part of a job recruitment interview, but it totally nailed me because she absolutely hit right on the head the thing that I was most worried about, that I was going to walk away from a unique opportunity that wasn't going to come along again and regret it for the rest of my life. And I went home and I thought about it for 24 hours, and I called back and I said, okay, I'll be there. Tell me when. Tell me what I need to do. You got me. And I use that same argument every time I'm trying to recruit somebody to NIH. And you can use it too.
So our last leap is an interesting leap for us because we have found ourselves in this position where we're actually working on the same mission together, which has been delightful. And that mission is public service through the National Institutes of Health. And we took a leap and stayed in place. Actually, we were, I'll start this.
Start it, yeah, go ahead.
We were, as a federal employee, as a White House appointed employee, Francis and others submit their letter of resignation at the conclusion of a term of office. And this was happening in 2008. And it was actually it's 2009 now, it was a couple days before the inauguration of the new administration. And we're out of the country, and Francis has submitted his letter of resignation when he gets an odd email.
From the White House, it has one sentence. It says, your letter of resignation has been rejected. That was it. And I wondered, was it the grammar? Was it the spelling? I mean, come on, people, what's going on here? Well, basically, that was their way of saying, we want you to stay. But that hadn't been our plan.
Right.
We had loved the 8 years working at NIH as a team in an amazing circumstance where science is so full of potential. And we kind of had some other ideas about things we might want to do. Didn't quite know what they were yet, but other ideas. And now here was this suggestion, no, you ought to stay. Don't leap, stay where you are. This was a struggle.
It was a big struggle for me because I thought we had this plan and we'd been working it out and it was all set. And I have to admit, I had a fear that I said to Francis, we've always played an offensive game. I know how to do offense. Set this goal, achieve this, go for that, bring in this team. I said, I'm fearful that we're going to play a defensive game, and I don't know how to do defense, and I don't think I want to do defense.
That was a good question and something to think deeply about. So we all thought about it more, talked about it some more. And then Diane kind of challenged me. If we're going to do this, there has to be something involved that you're really excited about. And so it was possible to begin to sort of make a list of what are the things that maybe could happen in medical research in the next couple of years.
And by the way, we're big believers in getting the lined pad of paper and sitting down and making lists. That's how we make most of our decisions.
Can't get away from that. And meanwhile, I'm trying to think, well, what is the job that I'd like to do next? And yeah, it would be something where I want to use the God-given skills that I have and that Diane and I share to try to make the world a better place, to try to figure out how to, particularly with the advances that are happening in medicine, reach out to people who are healing, who need healing, who are suffering, who have illnesses we don't have answers for yet. That's what I want to do. So what kind of job would that be? Oh, that would probably be the director of NIH. That wasn't quite the answer I was going for, but there it was.
And so Francis wisely brought to the kitchen table one day his pad of paper with the notes he had taken about the offensive program. And he had about 8 or 9 items on there. And when he got to number 4, which was, we're going to put an all-out effort into curing sickle cell anemia, the genetic counselor in me said, I'm in. And we stayed.
And we have been blessed and privileged to do so at a time where, thank God, medical research is one of the last remaining items in Washington, D.C. that is not political. And thank God there's still one of them, because otherwise it's a pretty scary place to be right now. So this is a case where we violated the Winnie the Pooh rule you heard about earlier about, I get where I'm going by walking away from where I've been. We get where we're going by staying where we were in this case. This was a leap in place, I guess you could call it.
Yes.
So those are some of our leaps, and you have many of yours ahead of you. So one of the things I could say to then all of you as means of exhortation, but also celebration, you all, I guess, could now be called masters of the universe since you're all getting master's degrees. Don't be afraid of those leaps, but you have to think about them in terms of exactly what it costs you. I heard a little quote that said, if you have to cross a chasm, it's probably not good to plan to do it in 2 leaps. Think about that. And there's a Danish proverb that maybe says it all, what we're trying to say. And it fits nicely with your remarkable opportunity to have been here at Sarah Lawrence. One who wishes to leap far must take a long run. If you're going to leap across a very wide distance, you got to get that momentum going. You have been in a place that has given you the gift of an amazing start in that long run. So go out there and do those leaps and change the world.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Congratulations.
Congratulations.